watching from? Wonderful. Hi, Sabina. Sabina from Nepal. Fantastic. From Turkey. Rahil from Pakistan. Bangladesh. So many of us. Korea. Hung from New Zealand. Ranjit from Nepal as well. From India. Kenya. Philippines. Russia. Hello. Good evening. Thank you so much for being here. So excited today to take you through IELTS reading. We're going to be focusing on a particular task today, and we're ready to jump into things. So I recommend that you have a pen and a piece of paper handy, ready to go. We're going to be learning lots of new things today, and be ready with your pen and paper. There's lots of tips and tricks for us to learn. Let's jump into things now. Thank you so much for joining us from all around the world. IELTS Simple Steps to Success. Today we are going to be looking at reading, and in particular, Task 3. Let's have a look now. Now, I want to know in the chat from you all, is this how your IELTS reading usually goes? Is this how you feel, that frustration? It's not an easy task. Let us know in the chat, is this what it feels like? Yes, I'm getting lots of emphatic yeses. I can understand. Now, after this class, I can assure you it will feel much more like this. That feeling of elation, of knowing that you've got the correct answer because you've used all the strategies that we're going to give you today. Now, here's what we will be learning in this live class. Today, we're going to look at the E2 method for summary completion task. We are then going to learn how to do a summary completion task. Choose words from a text. Now, this is really important because we're going to look at two versions of this particular task. The second version we're going to do is choose words from a list. So we're going to learn how to do both versions of this summary completion task. And of course, I'm going to give you lots of tips and tricks along the way for these summary completion tasks. So make sure you're paying close attention and following along. Now, just a few housekeeping things before we jump straight into learning. Before we begin, the chat box, should you use it for? Mainly to write your answers. I'm going to be asking you questions as we go, some yes, no, some answers, some of your opinions. And I want you to use the chat box, whether you're joining from Zoom or from YouTube or elsewhere. And you can also use this to ask questions as we go. Who can see what you write? If you've set your chat box settings to just hosts and panelists, just me, myself, I can read what you're writing. Otherwise, if you've set your chat box settings to everyone, other students can also read what you're writing. Now, in the chat, I'd like to know, what band score are you hoping for in IELTS? Please let us know in the chat, what band score are you hoping for? Ooh, a 9. That was the first one out of the gate. Excellent. Lots of 7s. 7.58. I've seen a band 10 in the comments, and I have to tell you, band 10 does not exist. The highest band you can get is 9. Lots of 8s. Fantastic. Hopefully with today's class, we can help you achieve your dream score. Okay, we're going to do an overview of IELTS reading to begin with. So this is what you can expect in the reading subtest of IELTS. IELTS reading is split up into 3 sections, and we recommend generally 20 minutes per section because you're given 60 minutes to complete the IELTS reading test. There are 40 questions in total, which means you have about 11 to 14 questions per section for each of the 3 sections. And this is really important to note. The questions may not always appear in text order. So this is something we're going to look at a little bit closer later down the track, but just know in the back of your mind that if you're reading a text, sometimes the questions don't come in the same order as the text is. Now, if you're taking the IELTS Academic, there is 1 text per section. However, with IELTS General Training, there are a range. So in section 1, you'll see 2 to 4 texts. In section 2, you'll see 2 texts, and what we're focusing on today is section 3, and just like the academic, there is just one text that you're looking at. Now, section 3, the text is generally more long and it's much more complex, and this is true for both the IELTS academic and the general test. So if you're taking either of these tests, this live class is perfect for you because our task today is going to do that for both of the general and academic. Now, there are 11 possible task types that you can get in the reading test. A range from multiple choice, identifying information, true, false, not given, identifying the writer's views or claims, yes, no, not given, matching informations, matching headings, matching features, sentence endings, sentence completion, and summary, note, table, flowchart completion, and then, of course, diagram label completion and short answer questions. But our focus today is solely on those 2 versions of summary completion. Now, taking a look at the band scores and how they compare between general and academic, you can see here that if you get the same score on the left-hand side for both general and academic, you get a higher band score in the academic test. And the reason for this is the IELTS academic test, as many of you know, is a little bit more complex. It's much more technical. And so if you get a 34 score out of 40 on the IELTS General, you'll get a band of 7, but that can actually get you, if you get a 35 in the academic, you can get a band score of 8. So let us know in the comments now, are you taking the IELTS General training or the IELTS Academic? Which one are you preparing for now? Quite a few academic, excellent. And there's a few of us that are taking general, but mostly IELTS academic, which is fantastic. Great that you're shooting for that. So this will definitely be relevant to you. Now, for more preparation today, other than this class, you can go to e2testprep.com and you'll be able to get 20% off any IELTS test prep package or upgrade. And that's if you want to see more mock tests, assessment, practice questions, all sorts of material, and use the code ACE20. So check that out. If you're not sure where you are in your IELTS journey and you need a bit of assistance, I highly recommend scheduling a free consultation today, and you'll be able to chat to one of our expert English advisors who will help get you on track. Great. We're now going to do an overview of the task that we're going to be looking at in detail today. So, what does summary completion actually look like? Let's have a look now. You are going to have a long, complex text that appears in section 3 of the reading test. And this example here that you see on the screen, it's just a section from a longer text. The long texts, I can assure you, are much longer. They're multi-paragraph, and we'll get to see a couple of examples in just a moment. You'll see a set of instructions, and they've been bolded there on the screen for you. Here it says, write one word only from the text in each gap. Now, this is really important to note. The instruction tell you a few things. Number 1 is how many words you can use. So this may vary from test to test. You may get instructions that say that you can write up to 2 words and perhaps a word and or a number. So keeping track of what the instructions tell you, really important. They also tell you where the words come from. In this case, they come from the text, and where your answers need to go. In this case, the gap. Here's what the summary looks like. It usually consists of 1 to 2 paragraphs, as you can see here, and it will be a paraphrase section of the text. What that means is someone's taken a chunk of the text and they've basically summarized it, they've paraphrased it in different words and used it for summary completion. Now, in the summary, you're going to notice these numbered blanks. That is where your answers go. So you have to figure out the word or the correct phrase that correctly fits into the numbered blanks here. And this is a really important tip. You must use an exact word or phrase, and you cannot change the form. So, for example, if the word from the text says, or if the word from the list says valued, you cannot change it to valuable to fit what goes into the gap. And that is because it would be inaccurate. So if you're changing the word form, that means that's not the correct answer. Really important tip to note. Sorry, here we go. In this question type, it's also important to note that the answers don't always come in order, so they may not correspond exactly with the text. It's really important to keep track of that. You also need to pay attention to things such as synonyms, parallel expressions, or paraphrase versions of words and phrases. And I'm going to explain that to you in a little bit of detail now. So synonyms are key to IELTS reading. Looking for words that have similar meanings or a paraphrase version of that word from the text, you're going to see options often in the text, in the summary completion task, and perhaps even in the list of phrases or words that you're given. So looking for things like parallel expressions, synonyms, synonymous phrases, they all mean the same thing. You're looking for words with similar meanings. Let's get back into it. Another important tip is that you need to beware of distractors in the text and answer options. So distractors are words that are incorrect, often in the answer options, and they show up in the text. So they're misleading. You may feel tempted that you want to use a distractor in your answer, but you need to beware of them. You often can avoid them by reading for meaning. And we're going to look at some examples of this later on. Another really important thing to note is to look for signal language to help locate answers. So, signal language, what does this mean? Signal language, sorry, I've just stopped sharing now here. Stop share. Signal language are linking words or phrases. So words like firstly, secondly, finally, however, they tell us that a new idea is about to come up. Now, words like however are really important because they tell us that ideas are going to contrast. So you may have just read an idea and then you see however, and a new idea may come up that contrasts the old idea or the idea that was previously mentioned. So really important to look for signal language. It's going to help you in IELTS reading and especially summary completion. Now we're going to look at the E2 method. So here is the method. Number one is we're going to check the instructions so that we know how many words we need to use, where they need to come from, and where we need to put them. Number two, we need to read the summary and highlight key words. Number three, we need to scan the text for the relevant section. So you're going to be reading the complex text and looking for the correct section of that long text. Number four, we need to read carefully in that section of the text. And five, of course, choose our answer. Let's look at this in a little bit more detail. Before we move on into looking at it in detail, you will need to skim read the long text before you begin the method for summary completion. This is really important. Skim reading is not a part of this method. It's really important that in section 3 of the reading test, when you get to the long text, you have already skim read it. So make sure you keep this in mind. Okay, so number one, we're checking the instructions. How many words can we write? Where should the words come from? But also, where do we need to put the words? Now, this is an example. We're not going to do this one now. Don't worry. We're going to get to practice in just a second. The second step is that we're going to read the whole summary and highlighting keywords as we go. Now, I've got a tip for you for what you need to look for in keywords. Keywords can be anything from nouns and verbs. So important nouns, perhaps it's technical words. Verbs, maybe verbs that come before the blank. Sometimes names of towns or cities or countries, so locations are very helpful, and also numbers. So look out for numbers that are in the form of years or dates or durations or age. All of these types of words and numbers are going to be really important keywords for you as we go, and we'll get to practice that in just a moment. Here we can see that the keywords have been highlighted. And then we're going to scan the long text to find the relevant place. So we're going to use the keywords to help us find which section of the long text that is we're using to complete the summary. So as you can see, you'll be able to identify the section of the text. Then we'll need to slow down and read carefully, and we're going to use the keywords, but also clues around the keywords, so other words around the keywords, to look for our answers. And this is where synonyms and those parallel expressions come in. When you write your answer, so once you've found your answer, it's really important that you check to make it make sense grammatically. So is the grammar correct when you've entered that word in? And of course, you can't change the form of the word or phrase that you've been given. Can you remember this method? Let us know. Are you able to remember this method? Are you familiar with it? Yes. Fantastic. Okay, let's have a quick review of it one more time. Number 1, check the instructions. Number 2, read the summary and highlight keywords. Number 3, scan the text for a relevant section. Number 4, read the text carefully, particularly that passage. And number 5, choose your answer. We are going to do this in practice now. You're going to get a chance. But I've seen a question here come up from Damanjeet, and she has asked, can you please expand about skim reading once more, please? Because that was not mentioned heavily in this method. So in terms of skim reading, when you approach section 3, you're going to come across a long text. It's really important when you're skim reading that you're looking at each paragraph and you're definitely looking at the topic sentence of each paragraph. And you might be looking for keywords as you go. So pay attention to the title and definitely the paragraphs and perhaps what is the main idea of each paragraph. That is what you're looking for when you're skim reading, and it's definitely going to help you when you get to the task, especially in summary completion. Thanks for your questions. Keep them coming. Now, if you want more methods videos, I have to recommend that we are offering 20% off any IELTS test prep package or upgrade, and you can find that all at e2testprep.com. Make sure you use the code ACE20, and all the information is in the link that is placed in the description or in the chat box. And again, if you're not sure where you need to begin in your IELTS journey or where you're at, you can schedule a free consultation with us today after class, and one of our expert advisors will help you figure out what you need to do and where you need to go. Fantastic. It's time for real practice. This practice is going to focus on choosing words from a text. So let's dive in. This is an example of the summary completion task that we're going to be doing. Let's look at the instructions first. So the instructions say, complete the summary below. Write one word only from the text in each gap. That means we can only write one word. The word must come from the text that we're going to read, and it must be written in the gap. Those are the instructions, and I want to make sure that you follow the instructions carefully, because often a common mistake is not reading the instructions, and this can result in a lower band score. So make sure you're checking the instructions. Now we're going to read the summary together, and we're going to highlight keywords, but I'm going to read the summary to you first so you get an understanding of what this summary is about. How papyrus documents have survived. That is the heading of the summary. Remember, the heading's going to help us as well. Papyrus is rich in cellulose and in some conditions will be destroyed by fungal growths or be consumed by blank. However, it can survive for long periods in an environment that is dry. It has been found in a 5,000-year-old blank in Egypt, and in Herculaneum, many papyrus documents were preserved following a huge blank in 79 CE. In the town of Oxyrhynchus, unwanted administrative documents were left on rubbish dumps, which were covered with sand, preserving them for many years. Okay, that is the summary. I want to know from you now, what are some of the key words? Type your answers into the chat box. What do you think are some of the key words in this summary? Please let us know in the chat box. I'm eagerly awaiting your answers. Papyrus, cellulose, excellent. Fungal growths, 79 CE. So great to see someone picking up on the number. 5,000 years old, another number. Consumed, excellent. Someone's picked up on a verb there that comes before the blank. Great. Egypt, yes. Yes, Egypt is a location, so it's an important keyword. Great to see all of these. Oxyrhynchus, great. Here are the keywords that I came up with. You can notice I highlighted the heading because the heading is going to help us find the relevant section. And I've got similar words to what you have mentioned at home. Papyrus, cellulose, fungal growths. This is a technical term, so I think it might be important. Consumed by is a verb right before the gap. Found, another important verb, and then the numbers like 5,000-year-old, 79 CE. I've got two locations, Egypt and Herculaneum, and of course the verb preserved I think is going to be important. Like I said before, the heading of the summary can help us locate the correct section of the text, so let's see how that works. This is the text in full. It goes on to the next page. So this text is about 9 paragraphs long. You can see it's a multi-paragraph text. And remember, we would have already skim read the whole text before beginning the text. We're not going to do that now because we want to jump straight into completing the summary. So we would scan the text using the keywords, and I'll give you a hint now. It is passage C. You can start to see some of those keywords right now. Cellulose comes up, and we can see 79 CE and Egypt. We can see some of those keywords occurring. Here is that section of the text in full. So it came from passage C. And in just a moment, we are going to begin our summary completion. Okay, so I've got my summary on the right-hand side. I've got the keywords highlighted, and I've got the correct version of the text on the left. Now, we need to slow down and read carefully. And we're going to do that by going sentence by sentence to find the answers. Some of you are really keen and you've already jumped in with answers, which is fantastic. But for the method, we want to do this properly. Let's look at it sentence by sentence. So, in moist climates, the cellulose-rich sheets of papyrus would readily decay, becoming covered by mold or full of holes from attacks by insects. That's the first sentence. Can you let me know, yes or no, in the chat? Does this sentence contain similar keywords from the summary sentence? Let us know, yes or no. Yes, getting lots of yeses. Some people even throwing in their answers, which is fantastic. Now, I've seen a few wrong answers come in already, so it's really important that you follow along with the method. It's not going to lead us astray. We're going to be able to find the correct answer now. Yes. Okay, let's look at the corresponding or the matching keywords now. Cellulose is repeated, papyrus. Mold has been paraphrased as fungal growths in the summary, and attacks is another way that they've said consumed by. So consumed was a verb, but attacks, we know, is a noun. It's a plural noun. So look at the matching words of the keywords in the text. Which word from the text fits in the gap? Type your answers into the chat box now, and I can see plenty of answers coming through, which is fantastic. Great to see everyone jumping in and letting us know. Great. If you have answered insects, you are correct. Papyrus is rich in cellulose and in some conditions will be destroyed by fungal growths or be consumed by insects. Fantastic. Let's try the next gap, and we're going to go sentence by sentence again. It has been found in a 5,000-year-old blank in Egypt. Does this sentence on the left, the second sentence from the text, does it correspond with the summary sentence? Do you see similar keywords? Yes or no? Can you see similar keywords? I'm getting a lot of no's. Okay, good. I've seen a couple of wrong answers. I've seen someone chuck in the word stable. That is not correct because this is not the correct sentence that matches with the summary. So no, it's not the correct sentence. Here is another sentence. Does this include similar keywords? Let us know in the chat. Does it have similar keywords as the summary sentence? Have a read of it. I can see some of you spotting the keywords already. Yes, and here are the matching keywords. Found was repeated the same way. We have 5,000-year-old, and instead of writing it in numbers, in the text, it's written in words, and Egypt, the location, was repeated. So we know we're in the right place. Now it's time to figure out the answer. Let us know right now, what is the correct answer in the chat box? So I've seen a few people answer Memphis. Have a think again about what is 5,000 years old. You need to read here closely. Okay, it has been found in a 5,000-year-old tomb in Egypt. If you said tomb, you are correct. We needed a noun there, okay? All right, let's try the final gap together. And in Herculaneum, many papyrus documents were preserved following a huge blank in 79 CE. Does this include similar keywords from the summary sentence? Yes or no? Great to see lots of yeses coming in. And let's see why it does include similar keywords. So, the date, 79 CE, even though it's in a different place, you can see that order has been swapped around. It is there. Herculaneum is repeated, and we have this word preserved in the summary sentence, which has a synonym, the word protected, in the text. So we can see the use of synonyms here is really important. Look at these keywords. They're matching. What is the answer now? Type your answer into the chat box. In 79 CE, nearly 2,000 papyrus scrolls in the library of Julius Caesar's father-in-law were protected at Herculaneum by ash from the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Great to see so many answers coming through. Remember, I've seen someone come in with 2-word answers. So remember, it can only be a 1-word answer. That is what our instructions told us. The correct answer is eruption. Now, if you wrote volcanic eruption, that would be incorrect because you didn't follow the instructions correctly. Remember, the instructions say write 1 word only, and eruption was a correct noun to put in there. Fantastic. That is a summary completed. We are now going to look at a second practice task, and this one is choose words from a list. Can you let us know in the chat if you have done summary completion, choose words from a list before? Have you done practice where you've had to choose words from a list? Some people will say that this one is a little bit trickier because you have to look at the list. Yes, a bunch of yeses, which is fantastic. Yes, Ankana, you have said it's a bit daunting. I agree with you. I can understand. But after we go through this practice round, I think it will be much less daunting. We're going to use some of those strategies that we've talked about. Great. It's fantastic to see we need practice. Thank you so much for all your commentary in the chat and your interactions. So here is our new summary completion task. Using AI in the UK health system. Let's take a look at the instructions first. The instructions say complete the summary using the list of phrases A to F below. We can see the list of phrases here at the bottom, lettered A to F. We have to choose the correct answer and move it into the gap. So in the computer-based version, you would need to drag and drop your answer into the gap. If you look at these options, they're all 2 words, and we'll speak more about that in a second. We are going to read the summary now together, and we're going to figure out some of the key words. So let's read now together. AI currently has a limited role in the way blank are allocated in the health service. The positive aspect of AI having a bigger role is that it would be more efficient and lead to patient benefits. However, such a change would result, for example, in certain blank not having their current level of blank. It is therefore important that AI goals are appropriate so that discriminatory practices could be avoided. What are some of the key words in this summary? Let us know in the chat box. We want to know, what do you think are the key words in this summary? Great to see some people jumping in. AI, yes. Health service, excellent. Lots of AIs. Limited role, fantastic work there, Peace. Health, lots of people coming through with health services, patient benefits are allocated. Well done there. Okay, let's have a look. These are my keywords that I identified. Of course, I've identified the heading, AI, limited role. This phrase, I think, is going to be key because it's quite specific. Allocated is a strong verb here. Health service for sure is going to be important. Moving along, we can see in the second sentence, even though there isn't a gap, I've still highlighted the keyword efficient. That's going to help me track through the text. Change the word certain because it comes before the blank, and level of before the blank as well. Now, it's really important that we look over the list of phrases too. So have a quick look over the list of phrases. There's a couple things that I want to say about the list of phrases here. You might notice that there are 2 words. Each of these phrases is an adjective with a noun. Now, in other circumstances, you may have a list of phrases that is just 1 word, or there may be situations where there's 2 words, like this example. You need to pay attention to if there is possibly even a mix. There may be 1 word or maybe a phrase of 2 words in the list of phrases, and you need to pay attention because that is where you're going to use your synonyms and parallel expressions a lot. So you're going to look at those list of phrases and see if you can find the synonymous or similar words in the text so you can find the correct answer. So that's where the list of phrases can be a little bit trickier. It's that extra step that we need to pay attention to. Here's the text in full. It's multi-paragraph. This one's 11 paragraphs long. So of course we would need to scan the text and we'd need to use the keywords to find the correct part of the text. This is the correct section. It came from the text. This is the correct section that we're going to use for our summary completion task today. We have it on the left and you'll see summary completion on the right. And we're going to go through this step by step now. We're going to slow down and read carefully, and we're going to do this sentence by sentence so we can find the correct options together. Okay, the first blank says, AI currently has a limited role in the way blank are allocated in the health service. Does this sentence from the text contain similar keywords? Yes or no? It says, these issues might seem far-fetched, but they are to some extent already here. Does this contain keywords? Fantastic. Lots of no's coming through. So make sure you're looking for the keywords that might be repeated or synonyms. No, there are no repeated keywords here. Oh, the screen's decided to do its own thing. There we go. Here is the next sentence. AI already has some input into how resources are used in our National Health Service here in the UK, for example. Does this sentence contain similar keywords? So look at the highlighted keywords, limited role, allocated, health service. Do you see them across there in the sentence from the text? Lots of yeses. Good. Excellent. Let's find the corresponding or the matching keywords from the text. AI is repeated. You'll see this phrase, limited role, in the summary has been paraphrased as some input. Used is another way to say allocated, so a simpler version of that word, and health service, of course, has been repeated. So here are the matching keywords. And now, before we find our answer, we need to beware of distractors. Okay, so to remind you once more again, distractors are those words that can be misleading. You might think that they're the correct answers that fill the gaps because they may fit grammatically, or maybe you've seen them in the text, but they're going to lead you astray. They're going to result in a wrong answer for you. So you need to be aware of them. You need to make sure that you've read for meaning. So let's take a look at the distractors in this task right now. Here we are. Okay, so in this summary completion sentence, what could the distractors be? The phrase needs to contain a plural noun before the word are. AI currently has a limited role in the way blank are. We need a plural noun here. So 4 of these answer options actually could be grammatically correct. Medical practitioners, specialized tasks, available resources, technology experts, all of the nouns end in an S. So we know they could make grammatical sense, but those 4 options, 3 of them are distractors. So we have to be aware of them. However, you might have noticed that resources works well in the gap, but remember, we're not taking a word from the text. We need to find the appropriate phrase from the list. So in the list of options, what is a similar phrase? Type your answer into the chat box now. What is a similar phrase to resources? Excellent. I see a lot of correct answers coming through. Okay, the answer is, of course, C, available resources. Now, I want to take a moment to point out something. You'll notice that the answer says available resources. Now, I know that you're joining here on Zoom and on YouTube, but many of you answered with the letter C. If you're doing the computer-based version and you type the letter C into the gap, you will get that answer wrong because you did not put the full phrase. In the paper-based version of the test, it's different. You can put the letter if that's what the instructions tell you to do. So be aware of that. When you're here in the chat, try and put the full answer as you would because it's really good test for practice. It's really good practice for test day. Now let's look at this next sentence that comes in the summary and also in the text. There's no blank here, but I want to show you how it helps to guide our reading and to guide our answers. So you'll notice that there are some similar words in paraphrasing. The words bigger role have been paraphrased as greater role, more efficient as efficiently, and patient benefits has been paraphrased as act in the interests of. So this sentence, even though there's no blank, it's still helpful to see the synonymous phrases. Here's the next blank. However, such a change would result, for example, in certain blank not having their current level of blank. Let's just pay attention to number 2, that blank. Does this sentence on the left contain similar keywords as the summary sentence? Let us know yes or no in the chat box. Does it contain similar keywords? This one's a really tricky one. And we're going to look at why in just a moment. I've got a few yeses, but I've got just as many no's. So this is a really interesting one. If you answered yes, that is correct. There are matching keywords, but this is a really tricky one because we have to read for meaning here. So let's read the sentence first. However, we'd be depriving some humans e.g., senior doctors of the control they presently enjoy. Let's look at the matching keywords right now. There's not that many. Some is another word for certain, and current level of is paraphrased as presently. Okay, so only two keywords there that appear, but there are other things that we can look for. That is these words, however, and for example. Do you remember what they are? I mentioned them earlier. Let me know. Do you know what kinds of words, however, and for example are? Let me know in the chat. I mentioned them earlier in our lesson. Got some mixed answers. So these are called signal words or signal language. And you can see they correspond in the text as well. However has been repeated, and for example has been abbreviated to EG. So there are more than just two keywords here. We use signal language to figure out that this is the proper sentence that we need to find our answer. Yes, George, they can also be called linking words. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Okay, so let's look for the answer now. What phrase from the text could go in this gap? Well, there's a couple of possible answers. Because we've got certain and some, we could have humans or senior doctors. But as we know, we have to find our answer from the list. So what could be a parallel expression for humans or senior doctors? Can you please let us know in the chat box? And if you can, type the whole phrase, because that's what you need to do in this task when you're doing the computer-based version. Type the entire phrase. Let us know in the chat. Excellent. Thank you so much. For those of you who are typing the entire phrase, try to avoid just typing the letter. Great. If you answered medical practitioners, you are correct. Fantastic. That is a paraphrase version of the word humans, or senior doctors in this case is the more specific one. We need to finish off our final blank there as part of that sentence. So let's figure out this final gap. And we had already figured out the key words in the text from before. So what we're focusing on is on the current level of, and in the text, the word is control. The control they presently enjoy. So that phrase has been flipped around. So we now need to find a synonymous phrase or a parallel expression for the word control. What is the paraphrase version of control that fits this gap? Not having their current level of. Great to see so many correct answers. Professional authority. So professional authority is another way that we can say control that the medical practitioners hold. That was a tricky one, so fantastic job there if you got that one correct. Now it's your turn. So we're going to do this in more of a test situation. I am still going to guide you as we go, but it is your turn now to get ready for the next summary completion task. Are you ready? Let us know. Are you ready for this next one? We don't know. Is it going to be summary completion, choose words from a list, or summary completion, choose words from a task? Yes, someone says bingo, we're ready. Fantastic. Okay, let's get to it. Here is the task. Let's pay attention now to the instructions. You need to choose one word only from the text in each gap. Phew, there's no list you need to choose phrases from. So pay attention to the words in the text. You're going to choose from there one word only that goes into the gap. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to read the summary with you, and I'm going to prompt you to write your answers in the chat. So remember, please write your answers into the chat box, but I'll be guiding you along as we go. So here we go. Project to reintroduce white storks at Nepa State. Last spring, 2 white storks were observed nesting at Nepa State, putting blank together high up in a large oak tree. Okay, using our method, let's go over and look at the first sentence. Does it contain some of the same key words? You might start to notice storks, Perhaps something similar to nesting. Nep estate, the place, is repeated in that first sentence. Putting blank together high up in a large oak tree. Oak tree is a key word. So, can you figure out what they were putting together in the large oak tree? And you'll be able to find that here in the first sentence because we've been able to identify some of the key words. Okay, lots of different answers coming through. I see some correct ones. I see some incorrect ones. That's okay. We are going to go through the answers afterwards and explain them in thorough detail. So that's number 1 done. Let's keep reading and figure out the next blank. The female laid 3 eggs, which unfortunately proved to be blank. Okay, so the eggs proved to be something. What did they prove to be? We need to keep reading after this first sentence. Drone footage taken before the pair started sitting on them showed 3 large eggs. Okay, bingo, we've got 3 large eggs there, fantastic. But we need to keep reading to find our answer. The fact that they were infertile and did not hatch was not too disappointing. You now need to choose your answer for number 2. The female laid 3 eggs, which unfortunately proved to be blank. What is your answer? Remember, it's just one word. Fantastic. Great to see so many people jumping in and answering. I'm going to keep reading now. However, this was not surprising for such young storks. Naturalists believe they are likely to breed successfully in the future. You may see in the text, there are corresponding sentences. This helps to guide us along. Let's look at the next blank. These 2 storks were bred in blank, and after arriving in the UK, were kept for several years together with a few fully mature storks and some fellow juveniles before being released at Nep. Okay, so where were the storks bred? We need to now look for clues. Use our keywords, the storks. We've got the UK there, so we can see that UK is being used as Britain in the text. Let us know in the chat now, where were the 2 storks bred for number 3? Fantastic. Great to see so many correct answers coming through. And we'll keep reading now. Here's the last blank. It appears that the other storks are developing a sense of blank to their new home. Let us know in the chat now, what are they developing a sense of? You'll need to read the text to find the correct word. And it will come near the end because we've already found our answer for number 3. So we know this answer is going to come near the end. You may use new home as a keyword to help you find the correct answer. Fantastic. A few correct answers coming through now. 1 left Nep for a year only to fly back to be with the group again. Fantastic. Okay, now if you didn't get to finish that one, we're going to go through the correct answers right now. Let's have a look together. In this first blank, storks, nesting, nep estate, oak tree are all the keywords, and we can see them repeated there. You might have noticed how built was paraphrased as putting together. So this was a helpful keyword, and sticks was the right answer. So if you got sticks, well done. Good on you. But you may have, and I noticed this a lot in the chat, you may have thought nest was the correct answer. But it would not fit grammatically into the blank because it's not a plural noun. So if we read that, we can hear that it sounds incorrect. Putting nest together high up in a large oak tree doesn't make sense. It's not a plural noun, and therefore we need sticks. Number 2, female 3 eggs proved to be. Proved to be was a little bit tricky because it was just simply were in the text, and the correct answer was infertile. So if you got that one correct, well done. Now you may have been tempted by the word disappointing, and this one was a bit of a distractor, and that's because disappointing would fit grammatically in this, but also you might have kept reading, but we can know it's a distractor because it has the words "was not too disappointing," whereas in the text, in the summary completion, it says "proved to be." So disappointing wouldn't make sense here. Final blank, number 3, we're almost near the end. Two storks was paraphrased as storks. Britain for UK. Several years was 3 years, and juveniles was repeated, as well as mature being paraphrased as adults. Now, bred in was a little bit tricky, so we had to read for meaning. We had to see how bred had been phrased differently in the text. You might have noticed that the words imported from Poland would have helped you figure out that Poland was the correct answer. So bred in was paraphrased, or it was phrased differently in the text, and we had to read for meaning. And that was quite a large chunk of the text. That one was trickier. Finally, number 4, other storks was repeated. Developing was paraphrased as shown, and the words new home was paraphrased as sight. So we could see that the blank came in between those, and the correct answer, so shown and sight were paraphrased, that was our clue. Loyalty was our correct answer. And that are all the correct answers there. That is fantastic. So hopefully you got many of those correct. And if you didn't, it's time to reflect now. Did you use the E2 method? So those 5 steps that we discussed, did you use the E2 method? How could you be more accurate next time? Perhaps you need to look out for distractors more. Maybe you need to brush up on synonyms, using those more often, parallel expressions, maybe looking for the correct keywords. So there are a lot of things that you may need to do to be more accurate. How could you go faster? You may need to practice more to do that. And of course, are there any new words that you need to learn? So this may be a simple thing of vocabulary. You may need to be exposed to new vocabulary in order to get better practice and better at this task. Fantastic. So let's recap. What did you learn today? You learned how to use that 5-step E2 method for summary completion tasks. We learned how to do a summary completion task. Version 1 was choose words from a text. The second version was choose words from a list. We learned how to do both of those. And of course, we learned some tips and tricks along the way with those distractors, signal language, all of those types of things to help us. Now, if you would like more practice, I highly recommend that you jump on e2testprep.com after this class, and you can get 20% off any IELTS test prep package or upgrade. Use the code ACE20. And if you're not sure where you are in your IELTS journey and you want some advice, you can book in a free consult today with one of our expert English advisors, and they'll help you get on your way. I want to know from you before you go, what would you like to see in our next IELTS live class? Let us know in the chat box now. Put your suggestions in. Is it IELTS writing? The previous class was IELTS writing. Maybe it's listening. Perhaps it's speaking. Or maybe you want some more reading. Lots of people wanting writing in the next class. Fantastic. More reading. Lots of writing. Keep that coming. Let us know in the chat. We love to know what you would prefer. Thank you so much for joining, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next class. Thanks again, everyone.